Hey, welcome to Just Johnny and Sophie. Friends, stories, real English.
If you have ever felt like you're, light years behind because of some terrible advice you got, we're going to prove that real English happens in the messy day-to-day of the real world, not in some sterile classroom where you perfectly copy sentences from a whiteboard.
Yeah, it's time to get a little vindictive against bad advice, I think, because when people are handed these supposed rules, they internalize them as personal failures.
Oh, completely. They blame themselves.
Exactly. They think, oh, I must not be smart enough. When in reality, the system or the advice they were given is just fundamentally flawed.
Totally. So let's jump right into the deep end with the biggest excuses people are given, what I kind of call the external barriers. These are the things outside of your control, specifically where you live and, well, when you were born.
Ah, the classic geography and age traps.
Right. We constantly hear that you need to live in an English-speaking country to become fluent, that geography is destiny.
Which is perhaps the most damaging concept right out of the gate.
Yeah.
People genuinely believe that if they don't have a New York or London zip code, they shouldn't even try.
Like it's a lost cause.
Yeah, but what the science actually shows is that while physical immersion obviously provides opportunities, it is absolutely not a requirement. Like, not at all.
So what does matter then?
What actually dictates your progress is the quality of your input and the consistency of your cognitive habits, not your physical coordinates.
And we have the ultimate proof of this in our own circle, right? Our friend Dan.
Oh, Dan is the perfect example.
Because Dan learned English mostly alone, living in a non-English speaking country. And yet his English is arguably some of the most natural, fluid English out of anyone we know.
It really is, because he didn't have the physical environment. He had to build a mental one.
Yeah, let's look at the mechanics of what Dan actually did, because it's honestly fascinating.
So he engaged in what linguists sometimes call internal immersion. We've talked about his strategy before, where he decided to simply think his inner monologue in English all day.
Right. He narrated his commute, his grocery shopping, his work tasks, all in his head.
Exactly.
But let me pause you there, because that sounds exhausting. Like, I hear that and think, how does someone physically do that without going crazy?
It is exhausting at first.
Right. Because if you don't know the words, doesn't your inner monologue just completely grind to a halt?
Well, that is kind of the beautiful part of the struggle. When his inner monologue hit a wall, say he didn't know the word for, like spatula while he was cooking, he didn't just give up.
He didn't switch back to his native language.
Right. He made a mental note, or he literally wrote it down on his phone, and he looked it up later. He was actively identifying the exact vocabulary his specific life required.
That makes so much sense, because you could move to an English-speaking country tomorrow, but if you only ever socialize with expats from your home country, you're not learning.
Exactly. If you never actively engage your brain in the language, your geography means absolutely nothing. Dan proved that geographical immersion is a myth, because real immersion is just about what occupies your mental space.
Wow, yeah. And that realization actually dismantles another massive excuse we hear all the time. The idea that if you didn't start filling that mental space as a child, your window has permanently closed.
Oh, the age myth.
The classic, if you don't start young, it's too late.
The idea that there is some magical cognitive window that just slams shut on your 18th birthday is infuriating. It discourages millions of adult learners.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit, because don't we always hear that kids' brains are like sponges?
We hear it constantly, yeah.
They just absorb phonetic sounds and vocabulary without even trying. So how does an adult's brain, which is supposedly more rigid, actually compete with a sponge?
It's a great question, and it really requires unpacking how neuroplasticity actually works. So yes, a child's brain has high plasticity.
Yeah.
They are literally building the foundational neural pathways for phonetic sounds and basic grammar.
Right, from scratch.
Exactly. But people mistake that biological process for overall learning efficiency. Adults actually possess 3 massive cognitive advantages that children simply do not have.
Okay, what are they?
Intrinsic motivation, advanced learning strategy, and established life context.
Oh, let's dig into that context piece, because I think that's the secret weapon adults don't even realize they have.
Totally. Think about how a child learns the concept of a mortgage.
Oh, a kid has no idea what that is.
Right. They are learning what a mortgage is conceptually like, a loan from a bank to buy a house, and they are learning the linguistic label for it at the exact same time. It takes immense cognitive energy.
Oh, I see. But an adult already knows what a mortgage is.
Exactly. They understand interest rates and down payments. The vast network of meaning already exists in their brain. They just need to attach a new English label to that pre-existing, highly developed cognitive network.
That makes total sense. And it feeds right into the strategy advantage, too. I mean, we saw this targeted strategy perfectly executed by our friend Marcus.
Well, Marcus is the poster child for this.
Because Marcus didn't even start speaking English seriously until he was 23 years old, way past the so-called sponge phase.
And yet, if you talk to Marcus today, his confidence in a room is extraordinary.
But practically speaking, how does an adult implement that strategy? Like, if I work in tech, I can't just learn tech words. I still need to know how to order coffee, right? Doesn't strategy have limits?
Well, strategy isn't about ignoring basic vocabulary. It's about ruthless prioritization.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
A child relies on whatever environment they're in to randomly hand them words. An adult can look at their life and say, okay, I spend 60% of my day discussing software development, 20% talking about my dog, and 10% ordering coffee.
Right, so you target those areas.
Yes. Marcus audited his life. He learned the English required for his specific career, his specific sense of humor, and his daily routine.
He didn't waste cognitive energy memorizing the names of zoo animals like a beginner's textbook forces you to do.
Exactly. He fast-tracked his practical fluency by only learning what he actually needed to say.
So if you have the mental space like Dan, and you have the targeted adult strategy like Marcus, what actually stops people from opening their mouths?
Well, it usually comes down to internal roadblocks, the paralyzing fear of not being perfect.
The perfection paralysis. This is the barrier that keeps people completely silent for years. The myth that you need to be grammatically flawless before you can speak.
It's so common and so destructive.
We have to talk about Maya here, because Maya is the absolute patron saint of speaking imperfectly.
She really is. And I mean that as the highest possible compliment.
Totally. For years, Maya spoke English with mistakes. But the crucial part is that she spoke it loudly, and she spoke it confidently. We have to revisit her legendary restaurant disaster story.
Oh my gosh, yes. Please.
So she was at this crowded dinner, right? And she mixed up the vocabulary for something incredibly basic and ended up ordering something completely ridiculous. The waiter was utterly confused. The whole table started laughing. And what did Maya do? She laughed the loudest.
She owned it. And that reaction is exactly why her English is so natural today. Let's break down the actual mechanism of what happened in Maya's brain at that restaurant.
Okay, lay the science on me.
When you speak, even with glaring errors, you initiate a real-time feedback loop. The listener's facial expression tells you instantly if your communication was successful.
Like the waiter looking totally confused.
Right. When the waiter looked confused, Maya's brain recognized the error. When she was corrected, the social energy and the shared laughter created an emotional tag on that memory. Her amygdala was engaged.
Wait, so the embarrassment, or well, in her case, the humor actually cements the correct word in the brain faster than just reading it in a textbook.
Precisely. Emotionally tagged memories are incredibly sticky. By waiting in silence until you are quote-unquote perfect, you actively starve your brain of that essential feedback loop.
You bypass the social friction that your memory actually needs to retain new information.
Yes, you are essentially starving your own progress out of pride.
And pride is a terrible teacher. Which kind of brings us to the academic sibling of perfectionism, the myth that grammar is the most important part of language learning.
Oh, this is why so many adults have trauma from high school language classes.
Right. They equate English with a math test where there's only one right answer.
But the reality is that communication is the ultimate goal. Grammar is just a tool that serves communication. It's not the master. It is the servant.
Let's contrast Maya's loud, messy success with our friend Lily, because Lily is brilliant. She studied grammar methodically for years.
She knew every rule.
Every exception, every obscure verb tense. She was perfect on paper, and then she had her worst job interview experience.
It perfectly illustrates the danger of over-prioritizing the rules.
So she walks into this massive high-stakes job interview in English, and because she had been trained to prioritize grammar over human connection, she completely froze.
Just completely lock up.
Yeah. The interviewer asked her a simple question about her past experience, and Lily's brain got caught in a loop, trying to decide between the past perfect and the past simple tense.
What happened there is a classic case of cognitive overload. Her
Yeah.
working memory was so entirely consumed with conjugating verbs correctly that she had zero processing power left for actual vocabulary retrieval.
Or even just listening to the person across from her.
Exactly. She was so terrified of making a structural mistake that her brain shut down the communication center entirely.
I always think about it using this analogy. Obsessing over grammar before you allow yourself to speak is like memorizing the entire manual of a car. You read every schematic about the combustion engine, you understand the exact fluid dynamics of the brakes, but you refuse to ever actually put your hands on the steering wheel.
That's a great way to put it. Communication is just driving the car.
Right. And the people who just get in the car and drive, they learn the mechanics along the way. You're going to hit some bumps, you might stall the engine at a stoplight, but you are moving forward.
A perfectly tuned car sitting in a garage is useless. What good is knowing the past perfect progressive tense if you can't tell your coworker what you did yesterday because you're too paralyzed by fear?
Exactly. Lily's freeze up shows exactly what happens when we treat language like an academic test rather than a human behavior. And that academic pass-or-fail mindset feeds right into our next barrier.
The talent myth.
Yes, the idea that language learning is some kind of genetic lottery. The myth that you're either good at languages or you're not.
It's a deeply comforting myth for people who want an excuse to quit. Because if it's a genetic gift and you simply weren't born with the language gene, then it's not your fault you're struggling.
Right, you can just wash your hands of the effort.
Exactly. But the reality is that language learning is a skill. It is not a talent.
Skills are actively developed over time through repeated neural firing and consistent effort. They are not inherited through your DNA.
Let's bring Marcus back into the conversation for this, because his background completely destroys this myth. If you look at Marcus's transcripts from high school, he was notoriously bad at English.
Like failed tests regularly?
Yes, he was literally told by his teachers that he just didn't have the head for languages.
But his biological brain didn't magically change when he turned 23 and suddenly became fluent. What changed was his environment and his approach.
The traditional classroom, with its rote memorization and grammar drills, just didn't match his cognitive style.
He realized he wasn't biologically bad at English, he was just bad at the highly artificial way it was being taught.
Once he stepped out of the classroom and used his own context, he flourished. It wasn't a genetic gift he suddenly unlocked. It was a grind he finally figured out how to navigate.
Which brings us to how Marcus, and frankly a lot of successful adult learners, actually get that repeated neural firing. And it's usually through a method that traditional textbook publishers absolutely despise.
Oh, the myth that watching English movies and TV shows doesn't really help.
Right. The number of times I've heard strict teachers say, stop watching television, close Netflix, and open your workbook.
It is genuinely terrible advice because it ignores how the brain naturally acquires language. The cognitive science points heavily towards something called compelling input.
Compelling input, what does that actually mean?
Compelling input means content that you are so genuinely interested in that your brain forgets it's listening to a foreign language. And I mean, I am living proof of this.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. I acquire the vast majority of my English vocabulary and phrasing through films, television shows, and podcasts long before I ever sat in a formal English lecture.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here, because there is a very obvious trap. We all know someone who falls asleep with an English sitcom on in the background. They've been doing it for 5 years, and their English hasn't improved at all.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we all know that person.
So when does passive watching actually cross the line into becoming an active learning tool?
That is the crucial distinction. Passive listening is completely ineffective.
I picture it like this. Passive listening is like letting water run over a tightly closed glass jar. The outside of the jar gets wet, but absolutely nothing goes inside. Compelling input is when you actually unscrew the lid because you desperately want to know what's in the water.
Okay, that is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The unscrewing of the lid is your brain actively fighting to understand the meaning. If you have a show on in the background while you're scrolling on your phone, the jar is closed.
Right, you're not actually paying attention.
But if you are watching a tense, intricate thriller, and you desperately need to know who the killer is, your brain goes into cognitive overdrive. You are actively decoding context clues. You are studying the actor's body language. You are listening to the slight shifts in their tone of voice.
I mean, yes, you are processing the vocabulary.
Precisely. So it's the sheer desire to know what happens next in the narrative that forces the acquisition of the language. You shift the entire dynamic. You aren't watching a movie to learn English, you're learning English to watch the movie.
It becomes an intense cognitive workout masquerading as entertainment.
Exactly. You turn the English subtitles on, you pause the scene when you hear a strange idiom repeated 3 times, and you look it up because you literally needed to understand the plot. That is highly active learning.
Okay, so let's look at the journey we've mapped out. You unscrew the jar and take in that compelling input. You build your mental immersion like Dan, regardless of where you live. You use your adult strategy to target your vocabulary like Marcus. And you finally put yourself out there, messy and loud like Maya. But eventually, inevitably, you're going to crash into a real-world mistake.
And that is the final boss we need to defeat today. The myth that making mistakes means you are failing.
This one hits deep, because in that exact moment, when you use the wrong word or conjugate a verb terribly in front of a native speaker, that insidious myth whispers in your ear, like, see? You aren't good enough. You failed.
This horrible feeling.
I have a deeply personal full circle moment for this one because I lived this exact nightmare.
Oh, I know what story's coming.
Yes, I was working at my first major corporate job, trying desperately to sound professional and polished. I had just studied some advanced business vocabulary, and I tried to use it in a text message to my boss.
A bold move.
A terrible move. I ended up sending something that was completely absurd, grammatically chaotic, and honestly, slightly inappropriate in its translation.
A truly legendary moment.
It was horrifying. I stared at my phone screen, and I genuinely thought, this is it. I am going to be fired. I have completely failed at English, and I have failed at my job. I was just bracing for a massive reprimand.
What actually happened in the real world?
3 minutes later, my phone buzzes. It's my boss. And he just replied, haha, no worries, followed by a self-deprecating joke about his own terrible language skills. The tension instantly evaporated.
That's amazing.
But here is the magic part of that story. After that disastrous text message, our working relationship actually got drastically better. A genuine, authentic human connection happened because of the vulnerability of my mistake, not in spite of it. He saw I was trying. It completely broke the corporate ice.
If we look at the psychology behind that interaction, it reveals a profound truth about communication. Humanity connects over imperfection. Perfection is sterile. It's intimidating.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk to a robot.
Right. When you make a mistake in someone else's native language, you are showing them that you're putting immense effort into meeting them in their world. You are being vulnerable. And the vast majority of people respond warmly to that vulnerability.
They don't judge the grammatical error. They appreciate the human effort.
Exactly. They see the respect you are showing their language.
And this is exactly why we wanted to pull all these notes and stories together for you today on this deep dive. When someone tells you that you need to be younger, or that you need to move to London, or that you have to study grammar for 3 more years before you can have a conversation,
You need to instantly recognize that advice for what it is.
you have to label it in your mind immediately. That is a myth. Do not let it take root in your head and dictate your progress.
And when you inevitably mess up a verb tense or use the wrong word at a restaurant and the whole table laughs, you have to reframe that moment in your brain.
Say it out loud to yourself if you have to. This is not a failure. This is evidence that I'm trying.
Evidence of effort. It means you are in the arena, you have taken the manual, you have gotten behind the steering wheel, and you are actually driving the car.
And finally, the ultimate mantra that we want you to carry with you from today. The goal is not perfection. The absolute standard of language is communication.
Did the person across from you understand your point?
Did you make a connection? If the answer is yes, then you succeeded. Period.
So if any of these outdated rules have been living rent-free in your head, if a teacher, a colleague, or a relative ever told you something that made you feel like you were irreparably behind, let this discussion be your proof that real English happens in real life.
It doesn't happen in a textbook. It happens in the messy, funny, vulnerable human moments.
That is our challenge to you for this entire week. We want you to adopt this new mantra.
Write it on a sticky note. Put it on your bathroom mirror or the bottom of your computer monitor. The goal is not perfection. Let it give you the psychological permission to be loud and messy.
And if you want more proof, if you want to keep breaking down these barriers and exploring the actual science of how we learn, hit subscribe. We have a massive stack of research and incredible real-life stories coming up over the next 17 weeks that will completely change how you view your own daily progress.
You definitely want to be here for it. Speaking of which, a little teaser for you. On Friday, we are actually sitting down to interview Dan.
I still can't believe he agreed to it.
We don't know why he said yes, but he did. This Friday, you're going to hear exactly how he built that mental immersion and how he literally thought in English all day long while buying groceries.
It is going to be a brilliant, highly tactical conversation.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to really mull over as you close out this audio and go about your day. We've established that the friction of making mistakes is the literal evidence of your progress, right?
Right. The mistake is the spark that creates the memory.
The absolute core of learning. So think about your schedule this week. What if the one English conversation you've been actively avoiding, that daunting phone call, the casual coffee chat with a coworker, speaking up with a question in a meeting?
What if that exact, terrifying, imperfect, messy conversation is the exact shortcut you need to finally become fluent?
Now that is a question worth answering. Unscrew the jar, get out there and make some brilliant mistakes. We'll see you on Friday.